Captain Taiho stood on the bridge of his cargo ship, watching stars streak past the windows. His ship, the Dawn's Promise, carried medical supplies to a human colony near the edge of known space. It was a simple job, the kind humans had done for over 100 years since joining the galactic community. "Captain, we'll arrive at the station in 2 hours," his navigator said. Taiho nodded. He liked these quiet runs. No drama, no problems, just steady work moving goods from one place to another. That's what humans did in space now. They were traders, engineers, and merchants. Everyone knew humans were peaceful. They avoided fights and preferred to talk their way out of trouble. Across the galaxy, Dr. Hana sat in her laboratory on Earth, studying alien biology. She was a scientist who helped humans understand the other species in the Galactic Council. There were so many different kinds of aliens. The Voreth looked like giant insects and loved to fight. The Kelthrin had feathers and were known for their clever strategies. The Makthar were reptiles who raided ships and took what they wanted. Hana often wondered why humans seemed so different from these warrior races. She had access to old Earth files, records from before humanity joined the galactic community. Sometimes she read about ancient human wars, but those seemed like stories from a different species. Modern humans weren't like that anymore. They had evolved past violence. At the Galactic Council headquarters, Ambassador Jinwoo prepared for another meeting. He represented humanity in the galaxy's government, a collection of hundreds of alien species all working together. Well, working together was a strong phrase. Mostly, they argued about territory and resources. "Ambassador, the Makthar clans are raiding again near the Outer Rim," his assistant told him. Jinwoo sighed. The Makthar were always causing trouble. They attacked small colonies and took whatever they wanted. The Council usually did nothing about it. They said it was just how things worked in contested space. "Are any human colonies affected?" Jinwoo asked. "Not yet, sir." "Then we'll file a formal complaint and hope for the best." That's how things worked. Humans complained, the Council listened politely, and nothing changed. But it was better than fighting. Humanity had seen enough war in its past. Peace was better, even if it meant accepting disrespect sometimes. Taiho's ship docked at the trading station without incident. He watched as cargo workers unloaded the medical supplies. These would save lives on the colony. It felt good to help people. "Captain Kang," a station worker waved at him. "Got a message for you from Earth." Taiho took the data pad and read the message. It was from the Colonial Administration, just routine updates about shipping schedules. Nothing important. He deleted it and went to get dinner at the station's food court. The galaxy saw humans as useful but unremarkable. They were good at adapting to new situations and could fix almost any machine. But they had no military ships, no weapons beyond simple planetary defense. Earth had a small defense force, but it only protected the home planet. Humans didn't believe in space warfare. The other species sometimes laughed about this. The Vorath warriors thought humans were soft. The Kelthrin considered them naive. Even the smaller species looked down on humanity's peaceful ways. Without military strength, humans had no real power in the galaxy. But humans didn't seem to mind. They built their colonies, ran their businesses, and lived quiet lives. Over a century of peace had made them comfortable. Why would they need weapons when the Galactic Council maintained order? Hana closed her research files for the day and headed home. She lived in a small apartment near the laboratory. Earth was beautiful now, completely recovered from the pollution and damage of the old industrial age. Green parks covered what used to be concrete cities. Clean energy powered everything. It was a paradise. She stopped to buy dinner from a street vendor. The old man smiled at her. "Dr. Choi, working late again?" "You know how it is, Mr. Park. Research never sleeps." They chatted about nothing important while he prepared her food. This was life now. Simple, peaceful, safe. Hana couldn't imagine anything disturbing this tranquility. On the Galactic Council station, Jinwoo finished his meeting. The council had voted to allow the Vorath Empire to expand into another sector. Several smaller species had protested, but the vote went ahead anyway. The strong did what they wanted. The weak endured it. Jinwoo walked back to his quarters, feeling tired. Sometimes he wondered if humanity's voice mattered at all in the council. They had one vote out of hundreds. No military to back up their words. No threats to make others listen. Just polite requests that were often ignored. His communication device beeped. A message from Earth's colonial administration. Probably another shipping schedule update. He opened it. His blood ran cold. The message was marked urgent. A distress signal had been received from Sarin 9, a human colony in the Outer Rim. The colony had over 4,000 people, families, farmers, scientists, teachers. They had sent an SOS. Jinwoo played the attached audio file. Static filled his ears at first, then a woman's voice shaking with terror. "This is Sarin 9, we're under attack. They came without warning. They're killing everyone. Oh God, they're in the school, the children. Please, someone help us. They're killing the children, please." The transmission cut off. Jinwoo stood frozen in his quarters, the silence pressing down on him like a weight. For 100 years, humanity had lived in peace. They had forgotten what it felt like to be helpless, to watch their people die while the powerful did nothing. He played the message again, forcing himself to listen. The woman's screams, the sounds of weapons fire, the cries of children. His hands shook as he forwarded the message to every human representative in the galaxy. Then he sent it to Earth, to the colonial administration, to every government official who needed to know. Somewhere on Earth, in a facility that hadn't been opened in a century, old systems began to wake up. Protocols that were written long ago just in case started to activate. Deep in classified files, a plan called Olympus waited for authorization. Humanity had been asleep for 100 years. The galaxy thought they knew what humans were. Peaceful, weak, harmless. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The SOS from Sarin 9 changed everything. The message spread through human colonies like wildfire. 4,000 voices crying out for help. 4,000 people who trusted that someone would save them. And no one came. The galaxy would regret that silence. Yuna had been a teacher on Sarin 9 for 3 years. She taught children between ages 6 and 10, helping them learn mathematics and science. The colony was small and peaceful, surrounded by farmland that grew crops under artificial suns. Everyone knew everyone. It was home. The morning the attack came, Yuna was teaching her class about Earth's oceans. 23 children sat at their desks, excited to learn about whales and dolphins. Then the alarms started screaming. "Everyone stay calm," Yuna said, though her heart was racing. "This is probably just a drill." But it wasn't a drill. The Makthar ships appeared in the sky, dark shapes that blotted out the sun. They didn't send a warning. They didn't make demands. They just started shooting. Yuna grabbed as many children as she could and ran to the emergency shelter beneath the school. Explosions shook the ground. She could hear screaming outside. Buildings collapsed. People died. In the shelter, Yuna held the children close while they cried. For 6 hours they hid in the darkness, listening to the sounds of destruction above them. When silence finally came, Yuna carefully opened the shelter door. The colony was gone. Buildings burned. Bodies lay in the streets. Of the 23 children in her class, only 4 had made it to the shelter with her. The others were lost. Yuna found a working communication terminal in the ruins. Her hands shook as she activated the emergency beacon. She sent out the SOS that would reach the galaxy. She begged for help that would never come in time. Then she waited with the 4 surviving children, surrounded by the ashes of everything they knew. On Earth, Director Suman sat in her office at the Colonial Administration Building. The reports were coming in faster than she could read them. Sarin 9. 4,200 colonists. 4,197 confirmed dead. 5 survivors found in emergency shelters. 5 people out of 4,000. Suman had worked in colonial administration for 20 years. She had managed supply chains, coordinated planetary development, solved thousands of small problems. Nothing had prepared her for this. Her communication device showed 47 incoming calls from families wanting to know if their loved ones survived. She couldn't answer them. Not yet. Not until she had more information. She accessed the classified files she had hoped never to see. Protocol Olympus. It was a contingency plan created 100 years ago, right after humanity joined the Galactic Council. A plan for what to do if humanity ever faced extinction again. Suman had always thought it was paranoia. Old generals and politicians who couldn't let go of humanity's violent past. They had built secret facilities, written detailed plans, prepared for a war that would never come. Now she understood. They weren't paranoid, they were prepared. She sent a coded message to Ambassador Jinwoo. Initiate Protocol Olympus. At the Galactic Council, Jinwoo demanded an emergency session. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered in the Grand Chamber. Jinwoo stood at the human podium, his voice steady despite the rage burning inside him. 4,197 human citizens were murdered yesterday, he said. The Makthar clans attacked without provocation, without warning. They killed farmers, scientists, children. This was not a battle. It was a massacre. The chamber filled with murmurs. Some species looked uncomfortable, others seemed bored. The Vorath representative spoke, his insect-like voice clicking. The colony was in contested space. These things happen in frontier regions. These things? Jinwoo's voice rose. You're talking about mass murder. The Kelthran representative spread her feathered wings. We understand your anger, Ambassador, but humanity has no military presence in that sector. You cannot enforce territorial claims without the strength to defend them. So we should just accept this? Watch our people die? You should relocate your colonies to safer regions, the Vorath said. The Council can offer financial compensation for your losses. Financial compensation, money for 4,000 lives. Jinwoo looked around the chamber. He saw pity in some faces, indifference in others. No one was going to help. The strong made the rules, and humanity was not strong. The human delegation formally withdraws from this council, Jinwoo said quietly. We will not return until justice is served. He walked out of the chamber while the representatives whispered to each other. They would forget about this incident in a week. Just another weak species learning its place in the galaxy. Back on Earth, things were changing rapidly. Captain Taiho received new orders while docked at a trading station. All human ships were to return to Earth immediately. No exceptions. He didn't understand why, but he followed orders. As his ship approached Earth, Taiho saw something that made him stop breathing. The moon, humanity's oldest satellite, was covered in construction. Massive structures rose from the surface. Ships he had never seen before emerged from underground facilities. Military ships. What is happening? His navigator whispered. Taiho didn't have an answer. On the moon's dark side, Admiral Daehyun walked through a command center that hadn't been used in a century. He was a historian before this, a man who studied old wars and ancient battles. Now those wars weren't just history anymore. Admiral, the shipyards are at full capacity, an officer reported. We'll have the first fleet ready in 30 days. Daehyun nodded. 100 years ago, at the end of humanity's last great war, the survivors made a decision. They would join the galactic community in peace, but they would never be defenseless again. They built secret shipyards in the asteroid belt and on the moon. They designed weapons based on alien technology, but improved with human innovation. They created Protocol Olympus. Everyone thought it was wasteful. Why build warships during peacetime? Why prepare for battles that would never come? Now they knew why. General Nari stood in a training facility deep beneath the Antarctic ice. 500,000 soldiers trained here, men and women who joined the defense forces thinking they would never fight. They learned tactics from humanity's long history of warfare. They studied every battle, every strategy, every lesson written in blood. The galaxy had forgotten that humans knew how to fight. Humanity had spent 10,000 years fighting itself, learning, adapting, becoming more efficient at war with each generation. Then they stopped, not because they became weak, but because they finally understood the cost. Now the galaxy had reminded them of that cost. 4,197 reasons to remember. Dr. Hana received new assignment orders. Her research skills were needed at military intelligence. She would study alien combat tactics, find weaknesses, help humanity understand its enemies. She opened her old files about human military history. All those ancient wars didn't seem like history anymore. They were a manual, a guide, written by ancestors who had fought for survival. On Saren 9, Yuna sat with the 4 children in a rescue ship. Human freighters had finally arrived, too late to save anyone but the survivors. The children were orphans now. Their parents, their friends, their world was gone. "Are we safe now?" a little girl asked Yuna. Yuna held her close. "Yes, sweetheart, we're safe, and the people who did this will answer for it." She didn't know if that was true, but she hoped it was. Across human colonies, people watched the news in silence. Saren 9 was gone. The council had offered money and sympathy. No justice. No punishment. Just empty words. Something changed in humanity that day. A switch flipped. A door opened that had been closed for a century. The Makthar clans celebrated their successful raid. They had taken supplies, destroyed a colony, and proven their strength. The galaxy did nothing. Why would they fear humans? They would learn soon enough. 30 days after the massacre at Saren 9, the galaxy received a message from Earth. It was broadcast on every channel, sent to every species, impossible to ignore. The message was simple. The Makthar clans have 72 hours to surrender Warlord Thrak and all raiders involved in the Saren 9 attack. If they refuse, humanity will come for them. The galaxy laughed. The Vorath military analysts calculated the odds. Humanity had no fleet, no weapons, no military infrastructure. It was a bluff. Angry words from a weak species that had just learned a hard lesson about galactic power. The Makthar warlords laughed loudest. Warlord Thrak himself sent a mocking reply. "Come and take us, little humans. We will add your bones to our collection." On the moon, Admiral Dae-hyun stood on the observation deck of the newly completed flagship Retribution. Around him, 46 other warships floated in formation. Each one built in secret over the past century, maintained and updated by engineers who never thought they would be used. "All ships report ready, Admiral," his second-in-command said. Dae-hyun looked at the fleet. Each ship was smaller than the massive Makthar war vessels, but they were fast, efficient, and packed with weapons the galaxy had never seen. Human engineers had studied alien technology for 100 years and found ways to improve it. "Captain Kang, are you ready?" Dae-hyun asked over the communication channel. On the bridge of the Retribution, Taiho still couldn't believe this was real. 2 weeks ago, he was a cargo ship captain. Now he commanded a warship with a crew of 200. He had gone through accelerated military training, learning tactics and strategies that felt both alien and strangely familiar. "Ready, Admiral," Taiho said, though his hands shook slightly on the controls. All across Earth, people watched the broadcast. The first Terran fleet was about to launch. Many people were scared. They had lived their whole lives in peace. Now their children and neighbors were going to war. But they remembered Sarin 9. They remembered the 4,000 voices that cried for help while the galaxy did nothing. Sometimes peace wasn't an option anymore. Dr. Hana sat in the Military Intelligence Center, surrounded by screens showing alien ship movements. She had spent 3 weeks analyzing Makthar tactics. They fought like ancient human Vikings, all aggression and individual glory. They didn't use coordinated strategies. Each ship fought alone, trying to prove its captain's bravery. "They're predictable," Hana told Admiral Dae-hyun during the final briefing. "They'll charge straight at us, expecting close combat. They've never faced an enemy that fights as a unified force." General Nari prepared her Marines for boarding operations. 5,000 soldiers trained for ship-to-ship combat. They wore armor designed from decades of research, carried weapons that could cut through alien hull metal. Each Marine had trained for this moment, studying tactics from every human war throughout history. "Remember," Nari told her troops, "we're not raiders. We're not conquerors. We're here for one reason: justice for Sarin 9. Follow the rules of engagement. Treat prisoners with dignity. We're not like them." The Marines understood. Humanity had rules for war, old codes written centuries ago that protected civilians and limited violence. These rules seemed strange to a galaxy that saw war as total domination. But humans knew that wars ended. How you fought mattered. The 72 hours passed. Warlord Throck did not surrender. Instead, he assembled a fleet of 300 warships and set course for human space. He would crush this upstart species and take their colonies for himself. The Makthar fleet gathered at Krell's Gate, a major trade route near the edge of human territory. Throck expected the humans to meet him there if they were serious about fighting. It was the perfect place for a battle. Open space with no obstacles. The first Terran fleet jumped into the system right on schedule. Throck watched the human ships appear on his sensors. 47 vessels against his 300. He laughed. This would be over quickly. "All ships prepare for glory," Throck ordered. "We will destroy these weak creatures and teach the galaxy what happens to those who challenge the Makthar." The Makthar fleet charged forward, each ship racing to be the first to engage the enemy. It was chaos, magnificent and terrifying. 300 warships thundering toward the small human fleet. On the Retribution, Taiho watched the enemy approach and felt fear grip his heart. There were so many of them. How could humanity possibly win? "All ships, hold formation," Admiral Dae-hyun's calm voice came through. "Wait for my command." The human fleet hung in space, perfectly aligned. Each ship knew its position, its role, its target. They had practiced this dance 1,000 times in simulations. "Weapons range in 30 seconds, the tactical officer reported. "Electronic warfare, activate," Dae-hyun ordered. Across the Makthar fleet, sensors suddenly went dark. Navigation systems malfunctioned. Communication channels filled with static. The charging warships found themselves blind, unable to coordinate or even see where they were going. "What is happening?" Throck screamed at his technicians. "Fix it!" But there was nothing to fix. The humans were attacking their systems, not their ships. It was a kind of warfare the Makthar had never imagined. "Fire," Dae-hyun said quietly. The human fleet opened up with railguns, magnetic accelerators that launched metal slugs at incredible speeds. The projectiles crossed the distance in seconds, hitting Makthar ships that couldn't see them coming. Hull plating shattered, ships exploded. The Makthar fleet lost 15 vessels before they even knew they were under attack. "Return fire," Throck ordered desperately. The Makthar ships fired their energy weapons, but they were shooting blind. Most missed completely. A few lucky shots hit human ships, but the damage was minimal. Human shields absorbed the energy and converted it to power. The battle became a systematic destruction. The human fleet moved as one organism, each ship covering another's weakness. They targeted Makthar engines first, crippling ships so they couldn't escape. Then they disabled weapons. Finally, they offered surrender. Most Makthar captains were too proud to surrender. They died with their ships, screaming defiance. Lieutenant Jiwon sat at the weapons station of the Retribution, her fingers flying over controls. She had been a competitive video game player before joining the Defense Forces. Now those skills translated to real combat. She could track multiple targets, predict movements, and coordinate with other ships faster than any alien could imagine. 3 more targets disabled, she reported. Offering surrender terms now. One Makthar captain accepted. His crew was evacuated before his ship was destroyed. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, 287 Makthar warships were destroyed. 13 were captured. The rest fled in terror. The human fleet lost 3 ships and suffered damage to 12 more. 3 human ships, 473 dead. It was a victory, but Admiral Daehyun felt no joy. Each name on the casualty list was someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. War always had a price. Warlord Throck's flagship tried to escape, but human ships surrounded it. General Nari's Marines boarded the vessel, fighting through corridors and securing prisoners. They followed their rules of engagement perfectly. No executions, no torture. Prisoners were treated with respect. Throck himself was captured in his command center, screaming about human treachery and cowardice. "You fight like cowards!" he spat at General Nari. "Hiding behind your tricks and your machines, a true warrior fights with honor." Nari looked at the alien warlord with cold eyes. "You killed 4,000 civilians, women and children. You have no right to speak about honor." The galaxy watched the Battle of Krell's Gate in stunned silence. The humans had won. Not just won, but dominated. 300 ships against 47, and the humans destroyed them with minimal losses. Every species began reassessing their understanding of humanity. The Battle of Krell's Gate changed everything. Within days, footage of the battle spread across the galaxy. Species that had dismissed humanity as weak merchants watched in disbelief as the small human fleet dismantled a force 7 times their size. Admiral Daehyun broadcast a message to all of known space. His face appeared on every screen, his voice calm and measured. "Humanity did not choose peace because we were weak," he said. "We chose peace because we understood the cost of war. Every species in this galaxy will eventually learn that cost. We learned it over 10,000 years of fighting ourselves. We became very, very good at it. Then we stopped, not because we couldn't fight anymore, but because we finally grew wise enough to see another path." He paused, letting his words sink in. "The Makthar reminded us what happens when the strong prey on the weak while others watch and do nothing. So now we remind you, humanity remembers. We remember every lesson we learned in blood. We remember every tactic, every strategy, every innovation that made us the deadliest species we ever encountered, ourselves. And we remember Sarin 9. The message ended, but its impact spread like ripples across the galaxy. On the Vorath homeworld, Empress Kalith watched the human broadcast with growing concern. The Vorath Empire was the strongest military power in the galaxy, and they had ruled through strength for thousands of years. Now this new threat emerged, a species that fought like nothing they had ever seen. "Call the Council of Clans," she ordered her advisors. "We must address this human problem before it grows worse." The Kelthran Dominion also took notice. Their strategists analyzed the battle footage frame by frame, studying human tactics. What they found disturbed them. The humans fought with perfect coordination, each ship knowing exactly where every other ship would be. Their weapons were efficient and precise. They wasted nothing. "This is not how young species fight," the chief strategist told the Dominion Council. "They fight like a species that has spent millennia perfecting warfare. How did we miss this? The answer was simple. Nobody had looked. Humans seemed peaceful, so everyone assumed they had always been peaceful. Nobody checked their history. Nobody asked what they were before they joined the galactic community. Captain Taiho struggled with his new reality. After the battle, he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Makthar ships exploding, heard the screams over communication channels as enemy crews died. He had killed people. Yes, they were enemies who had murdered colonists, but they were still living beings. Dr. Hana found him in the ship's observation deck, staring out at the stars. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. Taiho shook his head. "I was a cargo captain 2 months ago. Now I'm a killer." "You're a protector," Hana corrected gently. "There's a difference." "Is there? We destroyed almost 300 ships. Thousands of aliens died." Hana sat beside him. "Do you know what I learned studying our history? Humanity has always struggled with this question. How do good people do violent things? The answer is, very carefully, with rules, with limits, with the understanding that every life matters, even our enemy's life." "Then why did we kill so many?" "Because they wouldn't surrender. We offered terms. Most refused. They chose death over admitting defeat. That's not on us." Taiho wanted to believe her, but the weight in his chest remained. Across human space, similar conversations happened. Soldiers and sailors returning from battle faced the reality of what they had done. Humanity had awakened its capacity for war, and many people feared what that meant for their future. But there was no time for doubt. Intelligence reports reached Earth about a new threat. The Vorath Empire was assembling a coalition, 7 different species, all worried about human power. They called it the Grand Armada. 5,000 warships would gather and eliminate humanity before they became too dangerous. "They're afraid of us," Ambassador Jinwoo said during an emergency meeting on Earth. "Good," Director Suman replied. "Fear might teach them respect. Or it might unite them against us. 5,000 ships, Suman. We have 1,200 ships in total after the new construction. The odds are worse than Krell's Gate." "Then we build more ships. We prepare better defenses. We do whatever it takes." Admiral Daehyun listened to the debate and knew what was coming. The galaxy would test humanity's resolve. They would try to crush the threat before it grew larger. It made tactical sense. "We have 90 days before the Grand Armada reaches Earth," he said. "We use that time to prepare the home system's defenses. Every asteroid, every satellite, every resource becomes part of our defense network." General Nari had her own concerns. "My Marines can board ships and fight in close quarters, but we can't board 5,000 vessels. This will be a fleet battle, pure and simple." "Then we make it the kind of battle we can win," Daehyun said. The shipyards on the moon and in the asteroid belt worked without stopping. Every day, 12 new warships rolled out of production. Human engineers pushed themselves to exhaustion, building the fleet that would defend Earth. Chief Engineer Hyan Woo walked through the construction facilities, checking quality on every vessel. He was 60 years old and had spent his entire career maintaining the secret shipyards. Now his life's work would be tested. "Will they hold?" a young engineer asked nervously. "They'll hold," Hyun-woo assured her. "We built these ships to last. Every weld, every circuit, every plate of armor meets the highest standards. We might be outnumbered, but our ships are the best humanity can build." On Earth, people debated what was happening. Some protested the military buildup. Peace had been good for humanity. Why throw it away? Others argued that peace only worked when others respected your right to exist. The Makthar had proven that mercy was seen as weakness in this galaxy. Yuna, the teacher who survived Sarin 9, spoke at public forums about her experience. She told people what it felt like to hide in a shelter while her students died above. She described the silence after the attack, the bodies in the streets, the children who would never grow up. "I don't want war," she said to crowds that numbered in the millions. "But I also don't want another Sarin 9. If strength is the only language the galaxy understands, then we must speak it fluently. Not because we're cruel, but because we refuse to let this happen again to anyone." Her words resonated. Public opinion shifted. Humanity would defend itself. The Vorath Empress, Kalith, addressed the species joining her coalition. Her massive insect form stood before holographic representatives from across the galaxy. "The humans have shown themselves to be dangerous," she declared. "They hide their true nature behind smiles and trade agreements, but we have seen their weapons, their tactics. If we allow them to grow stronger, they will dominate all of us. We must act now, while we still outnumber them." The other species agreed. The Kelthran pledged their fastest ships. The Makthar, seeking revenge for their losses, sent every vessel they could spare. 5 other species contributed ships and resources. The Grand Armada grew. Dr. Anhana studied the enemy fleet composition and found their weakness. "They're too diverse," she told Admiral Daehyun. 7 different species means 7 different command structures. They don't train together. They've never fought as a unified force." Can we exploit that? Absolutely. We divide their attention, hit them from multiple angles, force them to make decisions faster than 7 species can coordinate. They'll fall apart. It was a good plan, but it relied on human forces surviving the initial engagement. 5,000 ships against 1,200 was still terrible odds. Lieutenant Jiwon and her fellow weapons officers trained constantly, running simulations of the coming battle. They practiced targeting priority, damage assessment, and tactical adaptation. Every second would matter. "We can't beat them all," one officer said during a break. "We don't have to beat them all," Jiwon replied. "We just have to make victory cost more than they're willing to pay." That was the key. The Grand Armada wanted to eliminate a threat, but they weren't fighting for survival. Humanity was. That desperation was an advantage if they used it correctly. 90 days passed quickly. The Grand Armada jumped into the solar system, 5,000 warships emerging from faster-than-light travel near the orbit of Jupiter. They formed up, an overwhelming display of force meant to intimidate Earth into surrender. Empress Kalith sent a final message. "Surrender your military fleet and disband your armed forces. Return to your role as merchants and traders. Refuse, and we will destroy you." Admiral Daehyun stood on the bridge of the Retribution, now the flagship of humanity's defense fleet. Around Earth, the 1,200 human warships took their positions. Behind them, the planet held its breath. "Send our response," Daehyun ordered. The message was simple. No. The Battle of Terra began at 600 hours, Earth Standard Time. 5,000 warships of the Grand Armada advanced toward Earth's defensive perimeter. Humanity's 1,200 ships spread out in carefully planned formations, ready to defend their home. On Earth, 4 billion people watched the sky and prayed. Some prayed to old gods, some to new ones, and some just hoped that human ingenuity would be enough. In schools and offices, work stopped. Everyone watched the feeds from the defense fleet, knowing that their entire future hung in balance. Admiral Daehyun gave the order. "All ships, execute Protocol Guardian. Show them why you don't threaten Earth." The human fleet split into 3 groups. The first moved to engage the enemy directly. The second positioned themselves in a defensive sphere around Earth. The third, the smallest group, disappeared from sensors entirely, cloaking technology masking their presence. Empress Kalith watched the human formation and felt confident. They were splitting their forces, weakening themselves. "All ships, advance. Crush them." The Grand Armada surged forward. 5,000 ships moving together created a sight that would have terrified any normal opponent. But humanity wasn't normal anymore. The first human ships opened fire at extreme range. Railgun slugs and missiles crossed the void. The Vorath fleet raised their shields, expecting to absorb the attacks easily, but human weapons were designed to penetrate energy shields. Kinetic projectiles punched through defenses and struck hulls. Ships exploded before they could return fire. "What kind of weapons are these?" a Kelthran captain screamed over the communication channel. Dr. Hanna watched from Earth's military command center. "They've never faced kinetic weapons at this scale," she explained to the officers around her. "Energy shields are designed to disperse energy, not stop solid matter moving at relativistic speeds." The Grand Armada's forward elements began taking heavy casualties, but there were so many ships that the losses barely mattered. They pressed forward, closing the distance to where their energy weapons would be effective. Captain Taiho commanded his section of the defensive fleet with growing confidence. After Krell's Gate, he had studied human military history obsessively. He read about ancient naval battles, air combat, and space warfare theory. He learned that superior numbers could be defeated by superior tactics. "Focus fire on their command ships," he ordered. "Take out their coordination." His squadron targeted the largest Vorath vessels, the ones sending orders to the fleet. When those ships died, the surrounding forces fell into confusion. Without clear commands, they attacked independently, breaking formation. Lieutenant Jiwan's fingers danced across her controls. She wasn't just shooting at ships anymore. She was disrupting their battle network, jamming their communications, and creating false sensor readings. The enemy saw phantom human ships that didn't exist, and missed real ones that were right in front of them. General Nari's Marines waited in boarding ships, ready to capture enemy vessels if the opportunity arose. But this battle was too large for boarding operations. This was a test of raw firepower and tactical brilliance. The hidden third group of human ships, the Cloaked Force, moved into position behind the Grand Armada. When they revealed themselves and opened fire, chaos erupted. The enemy fleet found themselves caught between two human forces, unsure which threat to face. But numbers still mattered. For every Grand Armada ship destroyed, they destroyed human vessels in return. The human fleet was slowly being ground down. Admiral Daehyun watched the casualty reports climb and made a difficult decision. "Activate the asteroid field," he ordered. For 90 days, human engineers had worked in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. They attached engines to hundreds of large asteroids, turning space rocks into kinetic weapons. Now those weapons activated. Asteroids began moving, accelerating toward the Grand Armada's positions. The enemy ships detected them and tried to destroy the incoming rocks, but there were too many. Asteroids slammed into warships at tremendous speeds. Even a small rock moving fast enough could destroy a vessel. The Grand Armada's formation broke apart as ships tried to avoid the asteroid barrage. The organized fleet became scattered groups fighting desperately for survival. Empress Kalith realized her mistake. She had thought this would be a simple battle of strength against weakness. But humanity had turned their entire solar system into a weapon. Every satellite, every piece of space debris, every resource became part of their defense. "Pull back," she ordered. "Regroup at Jupiter's orbit." But pulling back in space combat was dangerous. Ships had to turn around, exposing their weaker rear sections to enemy fire. Human forces pressed their advantage, destroying fleeing vessels and forcing surrenders. The battle raged for 14 hours. The solar system became a graveyard of shattered ships and floating debris. Human losses mounted. 430 ships destroyed. Thousands of sailors dead. But the Grand Armada suffered worse. 4,800 vessels destroyed or crippled. Only 200 ships remained combat-capable. Empress Kalith's flagship took a direct hit from a railgun barrage. Her shields failed and her engines went offline. She sat in her damaged command center, surrounded by injured crew members, and finally understood what the other species had missed about humans. They weren't just good at war. They were terrifyingly creative at it. They used psychology, deception, environmental advantages, and technological superiority all at once. Fighting them was like fighting an opponent who knew every possible move before you made it. A human ship approached her damaged flagship. She expected destruction, execution, revenge for all the ships she had destroyed. Instead, she received a communication request. Admiral Dae-hyun appeared on her screen. Empress Kalith, this battle is over. Surrender your forces, and we will treat your crews with dignity and respect. Continue fighting, and we will destroy what remains of your fleet. Why offer mercy? Kalith asked bitterly. We came to annihilate you. Because mercy is what separates us from you, Dae-hyun replied. We don't want to rule the galaxy through fear. We want to live in peace. But we will defend ourselves, and we will help others defend themselves. Surrender now, and we can discuss terms. Kalith looked at her remaining ships, scattered and damaged. She looked at her injured crew. She thought about the thousands of warriors who had died following her orders. I surrender, she said quietly. The 200 surviving ships of the Grand Armada powered down their weapons. Human forces secured them as prisoners of war, treating them according to the old rules humanity had written centuries ago. Wounded aliens received medical care. Prisoners received food and shelter. It confused the captured warriors. Why show kindness to defeated enemies? General Nari explained it to confused Makthar prisoners. We have rules about war because we learned that wars eventually end. How you treat your enemy today determines whether you have peace tomorrow. We don't want to fight you forever. We want this to end. 3 years passed. The galaxy reorganized itself around new realities. Humanity became a permanent member of the Galactic Council, with veto power over major decisions. More importantly, humanity introduced the Accords of Terra, a set of rules for galactic warfare based on human conventions. The Accords protected civilians, limited certain weapons, and established prisoner rights. Many species resisted at first, calling the rules weakness. But humanity offered a simple choice: follow the rules, or face human military intervention. Nobody wanted to fight humanity again. Ambassador Jinwoo stood before the reformed Galactic Council 3 years after the Battle of Terra. The chamber looked different now. Human representatives sat at the center, not because they demanded it, but because other species recognized their strength. A young alien delegate from a small species raised a question. Ambassador Jinwoo, what would humanity have done if the Grand Armada had attacked our worlds instead of Earth? Would you have come to help us, even though we abandoned you after Saren 9? The chamber fell silent. Everyone wanted to hear the answer. Jinwoo thought about Yuna, still teaching children but now at a school on Earth. He thought about the 4,197 names carved into the memorial on Saren 9. He thought about every sailor who died defending Earth. Yes, he said simply, we would have come. That's what terrified you most about us, not our weapons or our tactics. You were afraid because we have principles, and we actually follow them. An SOS was sent from Saren 9. We couldn't answer it in time, and that failure changed us. We promised ourselves that we would never ignore a call for help again, no matter who sends it. He paused, looking around the chamber. You awakened something in humanity when you ignored our cries for help. You awakened our ancient capacity for war, yes. But more importantly, you reminded us why we stopped fighting ourselves. We learned that the strong have a responsibility to protect the weak. That civilization means defending those who can't defend themselves. That's the truly terrifying thing about humanity. We don't just fight for ourselves. We fight for anyone who asks for help. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then slowly the alien delegates began to understand. Humanity wasn't dangerous because they were violent. They were dangerous because they had principles they would die for. On Earth, Una taught a classroom full of children from a dozen different species. Human children sat next to Vorath younglings and Kelthrin chicks. They learned together, played together, and grew up knowing each other as friends rather than enemies. "Ms. Una," a small Vorath child asked, "my father said humans are the scariest warriors in the galaxy. Is that true?" Una thought about Saren 9, about the children she couldn't save, about the war that followed. She thought carefully about her answer. "Humans can be very scary when we need to be," she said honestly. "But do you know what's even scarier? Humans who choose to be kind when they could be cruel. Humans who show mercy when they could take revenge. That requires more strength than any weapon." The child seemed satisfied with that answer. Admiral Daehyun retired from military service and wrote a book about the war. The final chapter contained a single paragraph that became famous across the galaxy. "We are not warriors because we love war. We are warriors so we can protect what we love. We built weapons so we would never be helpless. We learned tactics so we could defend the defenseless. We became strong so that strength would mean something more than domination." The galaxy mistook our peace for weakness. They learned the truth. We were peaceful because we chose to be, not because we had no other choice. That choice is what makes us human. And that choice is what makes us terrifying. On the rebuilt colony of Saren 9, a memorial stood where the old school had been. 4,197 names were carved into black stone. Beneath the names, a simple message. They called for help. We learned to answer. Never again will the strong prey on the weak while we watch in silence. This we promise. This we remember. This is why we remain vigilant. The galaxy had learned its lesson. An SOS from a human colony wasn't just a distress call anymore. It was a promise of response, swift and overwhelming. But more than that, humanity extended that protection to others. When any species sent an SOS, human ships answered. Peace returned to the galaxy, but it was a different kind of peace. It wasn't peace through ignorance of violence. It was peace maintained by the knowledge that someone would answer if you called for help, that someone would protect the innocent. That strength served justice. The SOS from Saren 9 had awakened humanity's most terrifying response, not rage, not revenge, but responsibility. And the galaxy was better for it.